What sorts of solutions and services does age tech cover?
Sure. And that's a great question and has certainly changed in the last 5, 6 years as I've been investing in the space. Like most people, I started out thinking it was just products for anyone over 65. And I think that's expanded now to really boomers and even a little bit before boomers as well. Anyone who's starting to think about everything past their primary career, trying to figure out whether it's retirement, second career, what they want to do with their lives, how they're going to make sure not to outspend their money, make sure they're protected, leaving enough for their kids. And then moving into the care settings, if they're receiving any sort of care, if they're receiving home care, if they decide to move into senior living, obviously. Any technology that is for the staff there, that's for the resident experience there to make that better, for the administration to make them run better, all the way through death and dying, whether it's preparing for it legally, financially, dealing with it emotionally, really anything in that spectrum that's working to make life better for older adults and or their caregivers, and actually maybe not that old adults, just people that are starting to think about the next part of their lives.
Like I mentioned in the intro, you've made more than 22 age tech investments in the last
hmm
5 years. So the explosive growth of age tech has been driven by the increased availability and accessibility to technology, which in turn is also driving innovation and creativity on a large scale, thanks to all the startups that are making waves out there. So, what
hmm
is your take about the explosion of age tech startup financings and exits in the past few years?
Sure. I think it's due to a few different factors. One is just the boomers getting towards that kind of retirement slash next step in life age. It's really that this has been predicted for a long time. There have been articles in the papers and radio, whatever, saying that the boomers are coming. They call it the gray wave or tsunami or whatever natural disaster they want to call it. I think it's actually opposite. It's a huge opportunity. But the fact is that with that, we've made such great strides in healthcare that we're able to live a lot healthier, a lot longer. So there's been all this anticipation, this buildup of all this demand for senior housing, for home care. And that hasn't materialized yet because boomers and even those a little bit older than them are still healthy at home and trying to stay that way as long as possible, which means that for the first time, all of these facilities have to actually think about how do we market and sell and get people to want to come here. You go back 10, 20 years, and there was just so much latent demand for senior living that you just put up a building and it would instantly fill up. And they're not used to having to actually do any selling. And so now for the first time, they have to start figuring out how can we attract people to want to move in here. And so that has caused them to look outside their normal bounds and look for technology that would help them do that, help them improve their margins because they're getting a little bit hurt again on that low occupancy, working on keeping people healthier in there longer because that also has the same effect. Then COVID comes and just wipes that out even more so and further enhances this idea that most Americans have, which is that they want to stay at home as long as possible. So now this issue that was already there has just been exacerbated hugely. And also, the boomers have started to pick up on a lot of these technologies that have been created for them. 6 years ago, when I first started, it was hard to find any companies that were having success in this space outside of maybe traditional senior living. But there have been quite a few that have been able to figure out how to market and sell effectively and that have been picked up. And later stage investors have started to see that, have started to learn and realize the opportunity that's coming. And that kind of all that deal flow kind of feeds back into the system. And so it's started to make that flywheel go around, which is really exciting.
Absolutely. So now, do you think this large increase in age tech startups will continue? And if yes, for how long?
That's a great question. Yes, I am very confident it will continue. For how long is a great question. I don't know exactly when the peak of this is going to be, but we are still a long ways off from it. If this is a baseball game, maybe we're in inning two of where age tech is going. And again, that's really driven by the aging of society, not just America, all over the world. And it just presents this giant opportunity for companies to make products and services to service all these consumers that are already spending. I think the ARP just came out with the number 56 cents of every dollar spent in the US is spent by someone over the age of 50. So they're
Hmm.
already the biggest consumers in the country. And it's only now that companies are starting to target and actually make products for them and not for millennials or Gen Z so they can TikTok around, which is fun, but it's a very different kind of thing. Again, I don't know if the peak of this is going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15. Certainly, as the boomers get older, and depending on what happens in terms of medical technology, as well as other crazy events that we can't predict, that'll kind of shape a little bit of how fast this grows, but there's no stopping it. At the end of the day, we are going to be an aged society, which means that most of the individuals are going to be on the older side. And so, as long as there are that many consumers there, we're going to have a huge market for age tech. And so, this market is only going to keep growing forever.